Hello, YouTube. We're going to continue on today with our study introduction of psychotronics. So let's kick it off here. Now, if you haven't seen this, the bird of Hermes is my name, eating my wings to make me tame. Let your mind wander on that for a minute sometime. But right now, we're going to kick it off. Going back. Okay, we ended right here. This is the diagram. It should look familiar. It's almost a pyramid. Well, it's a pyramid. It's also very similar to the stylus used to write cuneiform, and it is. Oh man, it's in a lot of other places too. But M, gravitational mass and inertia mass, E, energy, Q, consciousness, G, universal gravitational constant, and C, speed of light. Okay, this is how you apply this to the pyramid, the Trinity, consciousness, matter, energy. So let's continue down here. Looking from the viewpoint of psychotronics as a new science, the concept of vacuum, i.e., Dirac's vacuum theory in physics, presents problems which do not accord with reality. As is well known, Dirac defined a vacuum as a sea of real negative energy, but what has been suggested by experiments in psychotronics is that a vacuum is rather a sea of virtual positive and negative energies. Now think about that. A sea of virtual positive and negative energies instead of a Dirac view. Dirac's electron theory relates to the two energy levels, positive and negative, as shown. Sorry, I've got a cold. This weather is crazy here in Rocket City. Been wild past, oh man, past few days. Energies have been crazy around here. Where the E is energy, P the amount of motion for the unidimensional case, and C the speed of light. Dirac regarded the mathematically obtained negative energy level as something of real existence. Okay? And assuming the level to be filled by the donkey electrons of Professor Fushimi Yasharu, he defined it as a vacuum not itself dependent upon observation. If an electron escaped from the vacuum, its hole could be regarded as a positron, having positive energy and positive charge. This is the creation of electron-positron pairs by photons, and he assumed the reverse process was the mechanism of photon creation and the elimination of the electron-positron pairs. However, in this theory, an infinitely large negative energy occurs. So, you heard about that dark energy? Yeah. So that this cannot be said by any means to be a complete theory, as Dirac himself suggested. Above all, the aspects of this theory which presuppose a matterless ether do not accord with the realities of the new science of psychotronics. The author's proposal is whether we can take the speed of light, I think that was C, as it is in one, and consider a further level of virtual positive and negative energies. You see the math being being the imaginary unit, the real negative energy level is possible mathematically, but in the real world, such a level is in fact assumed not to occur and is disregarded. It is as if when we're solving a real wave motion equation, a trailing wave and a leading wave appear, but the leading wave is assumed not to exist and so is disregarded. Let us try considering the creation of electron positron pairs merely in terms of the real positive energy level and the virtual positive and negative energy levels. It is thought first of all that when the virtual level is empty, the electrons release complex energy, real photons, and virtual photons. The virtual negative energy level is filled, and then the virtual photons, is absorbed. The virtual positive energy level is also completely filled. If we assume this state of affairs, the electrons of the positive real energy level can exist stably without filling into the virtual energy level. Thus, a vacuum is to be defined as a sea of negative virtual energy and positive virtual energy. This may be considered to be the matterless ether. The positive and negative virtual energies cancel each other out, and so an infinity of virtual energy does not arise. Only the finite difference is observed. Now, when real and virtual photons of energy are driven into the vacuum, normal electrons are created from the negative virtual energy state. A virtual energy hole appears and it displays a positive electrical charge. The remaining real energy supplies its mass, and a positron fills the hole created in the sea of virtual energy. But when positrons and negatrons meet and are destroyed, the reverse of the above process occurs and real and virtual photons are released. In the case of creation and destruction of electrons, the positrons due to real and virtual photons, the law of energy conservation is satisfied. On the other hand, it is possible for real energy to be removed from the sea of positive and negative virtual energies, and in that case, proceeding from the theory of infinite, finite, infinite, it is possible to tap the limitless real energy. The various paranormal phenomena due to the action of consciousness are thus energy driven events. It goes without saying that the image of a vacuum as a sea of positive and negative energies also conforms to that of Eastern philosophy, which says that a vacuum is a sea of chi, governed by the negative and positive principles of yin and yang, air and spirit. Okay? This is very, very important stuff. I know it is over a lot of people's heads, and a lot of people think I'm just speaking another language right now. If you aren't familiar with these terms and the physics of all this. But what he's basically saying is that he's giving a theory, a very good theory and explanation for um, a um, for paranormal activity, for a physics, for an environment, a model that um, explains the craziness of Tibetan monks walking on hot coals, um, telekinesis, ghosts, um, all of this sort of thing is explained through this model here that he's explaining. Um, this is of course the Eastern view always has added it in to their models, but I digress. Let's continue on. This is not going to be so much. It'll explain itself a lot more in layman terms in a bit here. There are some typographical errors in previous articles as follows. You can look back over that later. Here's a good diagram, and here we go. The era of a new science which can measure consciousness itself, the interaction of consciousness and matter, energy. Okay, this is the chairman of Japan Psychotronics Institute. Initially, it was difficult to establish the new science of psychotronics and physics. It has, however, become possible to formulate a quantitative and scientific argument concerning the interaction of consciousness and matter energy. I intend here to discuss the quantitatively and interaction of consciousness and matter from the standpoint of a complex theory of thermodynamics and a complete theory of electromagnetics and gravitation. For a concrete model, I shall rely on the combustion of magnetically activated fuel oil. Okay? Magnetically activated fuel oil. I shall adopt the consciousness energy extraction process. Okay? I know this is deep stuff. You probably have to read through it 2 or 3 times. I did. Complex thermodynamic theory and virtual energy. In general, in catalytic processes where virtual energy intervenes instead of Carnot-Clausius type of thermodynamics, the following complex theory of thermodynamics obtains, where temperature and heat quantity have been complexed. Okay, there's some math here. T1 is the temperature actually measured on the thermometer, and T2 is the imaginary temperature inferred from the state of the matter. Okay? Q1 is the real quantity of heat, and Q2 is the virtual quantity of heat. Okay? Referring only to reversible systems, the change is real. Entropy obtained from one are of 2 kinds. Thus, in general, the entropy change can be expressed as the sum of an energy change due to the real state and an entropy change due to the virtual state. Accordingly, the first law of thermodynamics expanded into the complex domain becomes a law of energy conservation where virtual energy has been added to real energy. Okay, that's like consciousness added into matter or so forth. With regard to the second law, however, the possibility arises of a reduction of entropy in a thermal isolation system due to the inflow of negative virtual energy. And this effect gives rise to all the phenomenon peculiar to consciousness that cannot be conceived of in conventional physics. Okay? You might have to read back over that again to understand this. He's laying it down, explaining how and why all of the wild stuff you see with consciousness and anything that's virtual, um, basically like spiritual or can't be seen, I guess. But it's there, that kind of energy. Peculiar to consciousness that can be conceived in a conventional physics. Okay, referring now to the magnetically activated fuel oil, its Gibbs free energy is given by. Now, he's gone through and made, like, done the math on this stuff. He's done the math, okay? Where U is internal energy, T1 the real temperature, T2 the virtual temperature, S1 the entropy due to the real state, S2 the entropy due to the virtual state, P pressure and V volume, in normal thermodynamics, which does not have the terms given the fact that the entropy of the thermal insulation system cannot reduce. If temperature, T2, and pressure are fixed, then the Gibbs free energy cannot increase. Okay? However, according to the second law of complex thermodynamics, it is possible for a reduction of entropy, S2, due to the virtual state to occur in a thermal isolation system. And the constraint of this vanishes, so that free energy, i.e., energy which can be used, increases. In this case, because the entropy in the external part of the physical world does not increase, there is no reduction in the free energy there. Thus, if we consider only the real world without considering the virtual world, free energy can be created. The theory of created energy in equation, when so forth, math, increases only the amount of virtual energy flowing in is the negative virtual energy, Q2, in accordance with the conclusions of the composite electromagnetic gravitation theory, is relayed by the following equations to the virtual magnetic monopole. Okay, I know this is this is another language to most people that can't understand. And at the end of I'm actually doing this um, for the people that can understand it. Um, and I will, at the end, summarize all of this stuff. Physicists that can understand this, I'm telling you right now, their minds are being scraped off the wall. Okay, where g is the universal gravitational constant and c is the speed of light. Here, the virtual magnetic monopole can be equated to consciousness, thus taking the viewpoint of this theory. Even if our fuel oil is not actually activated by magnetism, and even if it is activated by the virtual magnetic monopole itself, which has become detached from the consciousness magnetic pole, it shows that it is possible to extract consciousness energy through the combustion process. Okay, that's crazy. Okay, the characteristics of water activated by the action of magnetism, and indeed the interaction of consciousness and matter energy in the brain can be explained by such a paradigm. At last, we, in the 20th century, have entered an era where we can measure consciousness itself. Okay? Did you hear about that? I don't think anybody heard about that. Okay? And this was I'm pretty sure this was written in 1972. Okay? Theory of created energy. Here we go. Actually, oh, this was approved for release in 2000. Okay. Here's another diagram. This diagram pretty much encapsulates everything that he was saying there. Let's see. The 21st century, the era of new science and new technology, beyond modern physics, the emergence of psychotronics. In the beginning, West European philosophy, which formed the foundation of modern physics, was a reductionist two-dimensional theory of mind and matter, which said it was possible to explain all the world's phenomena in physical and chemical terms. The main reason why modern science has now reached an impasse is that it has neglected the category of consciousness, something non-existent that has to do with matter, energy. However, in recent years, Eastern philosophers have been looked at again as part of a reformulation of Western philosophy. so that, for example, they appeared in a seminar entitled Science and Consciousness held in Cordoba, Spain in 79. Here, the concept of space, in which existence and non existence are interrelated, was through expressed in other words, nothing other than the existence and functioning of a matterless ether. It has not been possible to explain virtual energy, energy of paranormal phenomenon, by the relationship between matter and energy in conventional physics, E equals mc squared. What has been required is a reformulation and reorganization of Western science with the inclusion of the category of consciousness. And what has been born as a result of that is the new science of psychotronics. Consciousness is a virtual physical quantity, virtual energy, and is imaginary part of a complex electromagnetic field, and thus is virtual time-space. Consciousness, in the relationship between it and matter, displays catalytic phenomenon in respect of, you can't read that, and integration of electromagnetic and gravitational fields, which have posed difficulties in conventional physics, are easily resolved from the standpoint of complex electromagnetic field theory, so that an energy triangle relating to virtual energy or ethereal energy can be derived, and the energy relationships in paranormal phenomenon scientifically understood. The author announced this at the 5th Psychotronics International Conference held in Bratislava, Czechoslovakia from 6th June last year, which would have been 78, I think. It caused a great sensation. An age is now beginning when we can pursue the engineering applications of virtual energy. Virtual energy, people. Okay? That's pretty much what the D wave is doing. I mean, if you think about it, it is pulling resources from another dimension to be utilized here, which that other dimension would have to be considered virtual, right? I mean, it's not here with us physically, so that would be virtual energy of sense, I guess. But virtual energy as energy that can be manifested in your person through controlled meditation and skill to perform an act, like moving something without touching it, or drawing in enough energy to melt snow that's around you, something of this nature. That energy is what they're talking about. This virtual chi energy that is there, which in this they kind of bulk it with consciousness. Chi and consciousness are kind of the same thing, which I don't know about that, but nonetheless, they're really doing a fine job of, because we can't go any further. We have to adapt this science into our science, and it looks like they already did. But why did we not hear about it? Why have we not heard about any of this? There's a reason for that. There's a reason why we don't know about this stuff, and it's the reason is because we are in a slave state, and they don't want us knowing about this stuff. They want us to be dumbed down, enslaved, and low energy being, lowest possible vibration. They don't want us getting outside of the red. The red is where they want to keep us, the damn lowest possible vibration. And what human would want to do that to another human? I mean, humans would, I assume, would want other humans, all of us, to excel and evolve through, and do greater things with cleaner energy and adapt all of. No, there's some entity there that's blocking our way and stopping us. We've been held down by some force that we have yet to understand, but it's coming, people. It's coming. Okay. Reformulation of science, unidimensional theory of energy, reformulation of electromagnetics, existence of a virtual information channel. A virtual information channel. The conventional Maxwell electromagnetic equations are complex and divided into a real part and an imaginary part, taking this math as imaginary units. This is the complex electromagnetic field theory, and from this, the existence of an abnormality of the law of causality, a virtual electromagnetic wave can be predicted. Okay, that is just awesome. If this theory is correct, in future we can expect revolutionary means of transmitting information to be developed. This theory was developed by the author. Okay, this should have been implemented. I mean, this is amazing. This is what they're. I mean, you really need to read through it again and again and again until you can understand how earth-shattering this is to our whole way of thinking about things. And he's got the math here, okay? Why is this not being implemented by Elon Musk um, and all of these folks? I mean, this is could change everything. A whole new way of transmitting um, information, like through virtual channels. It's crazy. Um, Feinberg conceived of a complex time space and conceived distance of the complex time space, where c is the speed of light and is the imaginary unit, is a blind spot in the theory of spatial relativity and is matterless ether, i.e., the virtual time space. Okay, if for this space we assume, then it reverts to the usual four-dimensional Minkowski space, expanding the concept of time, the phenomenon of consciousness as a time medium. People, the previous concept of time was based on Newtonian mechanics, and great changes were brought about in this absolute time space by Einstein's theory of spatial relativity. Subsequent to this, the author has conceived of the possibility that the uniformity of the flow of time can be broken and the action of consciousness, even in the same system of coordinates, without having to consider motion close to the speed of light. Okay. Reorganization of thermodynamics, the lizard's tail reversal of time. The phenomenon of the formation or destruction of metal by the action of consciousness is thought to be due to entropy changes caused by consciousness acting as a time medium. The problem lies in the conservation of energy as stipulated by the first law of thermodynamics, and consequently there is a need to expand this law to a law of ultra energy conservation, which will embrace virtual heat quantities. Okay? Reorganization of quantum mechanics, external systems and internal systems. He's not just throwing out theories here, he's got the math behind it, okay? The Hermitian action elements are where A2, or A1, A2 are real number given values as I is the imaginary unit. The inherent energy is complex, from which flows an expanded formula which deals with the material world at the same time as thermodynamics. The physical side of this world is an external system and the consciousness side is an internal system, just like we have. And interaction between the two can be considered. And this will probably lead to a great leap forward in modern physics where matter and energy are all. This expansion is due to this here. Okay? Theme: Science and Consciousness. Participant panelists: Physics and Taoism, Hindu meditation, Indian philosophy. Okay, these folks are way up there. Okay, they've known about this stuff for a long time. They just haven't implemented it, and I don't know. I don't understand why we're still puttering around with this shitty, you know, Cro-Magnon science when all the good stuff is being held back from us. I mean, it's just we should have already bypassed this. They've already gone past all of this. This is old news. They've I mean, I'm sure that most of the members of Congress have children that are telepathic, clairvoyant. Um, they have teleportation devices. I mean, God knows. There's a whole civilization of people out there that are be 1,000 years beyond us. I guarantee it. I mean, this knowing that they already have this science done and in the books, and we don't know about it. I mean, I have no words. I'm just at a loss. Okay. Um, in the last few decades, phenomena have been reported worldwide which do not conform to the framework of modern physics and have presented a considerable crisis for our science. That is, our rational perception of the world. The author would like to think that the origin of such confusion in our knowledge goes back to Newton's mathematical principles of natural philosophy. On the basis of the thesis hypothesis non fingo, Newton avoided indicating the primary factors in gravity and pleaded that he could not but exclude the minute something which permeates and is concealed within matter in general. Okay. That is the spiritus of function of consciousness. Okay, so he couldn't add that in. He had no what do you call it? On the basis of the thesis hypothesis non fingo, Newton avoided indicating the primary factors in gravity, okay, and pleaded that he could not but exclude that minute something which permeates and is concealed within matter in general. That is the spiritus of function of consciousness. In fact, Newton said to have cried, Newton is said to have cried or tried but failed to develop a theory of gravity using a matterless ether, okay, i.e., consciousness. My efforts over the last 10 years may be described as an attempt to introduce the consciousness parameter to theories of modern physics and to perfect somewhat more our scientific understanding of the world. The overall idea has already been made known, but its salient point in essence concerns the complexing of all the physical theories. For example, complexing of current electromagnetic theory results in a complex theory of electromagnetics and can bring a rational theoretical solution to the unification of electromagnetics and gravity, which has been regarded as difficult in conventional physics. The law of energy conservation in conventional physics, which can be described as the unification of the laws of the conservation of mass and energy, has been further expanded to the law of conservation of ultra energy, further expanded to a law of conservation of ultra energy, which takes account of mass, energy, and consciousness. see the figure. Okay. Complex thermodynamics has also provided significant insights concerning the second law of thermodynamics. Put another way, if one considers the relationship between this new scientific paradigm and information science, the following 2 points come to mind. Firstly, neurophysiological research on the brain previously was conducted from a reductionist physiochemical standpoint under the influence of modern physics, but viewed from the standpoint of the conservation formula for consciousness. Oh, the conversion, sorry, but viewed from the standpoint of the conversion formula for consciousness, matter, and energy, law of conservation of ultra energy, advocated by the author. This cannot be said scientifically to be the correct approach. Eccles, in his neurophysiological basis of the mind, said that consciousness affects the neuron synapse and the space time patterns of neuron stimulation are related to consciousness. This is compatible with our new paradigm. Furthermore, because conventional thermodynamics have been reorganized and the concept of entropy expanded, effects will probably emerge on information theory. Even in conventional thermodynamics, the second law can be broken in systems with little freedom, Boltzmann breakage of second law. And in the new thermodynamics, breakage can be imagined due to virtual energy, the action of consciousness. In Shannon's information theory, the creative process for information and also the mechanism of entropy reduction in processes of perception cannot be explained. When one considers that difficulties of pattern recognition over the last 450 years, these are paradigmatic difficulties rather than lack of ability on the part of researchers. Okay, here's the breakdown: conversion formula for consciousness, matter, and energy. We go on here. This was, we have a date here, July meeting. Okay, 1985. This was July of 1985. If I were asked to try to explain what Inumata's theory is in simple terms, I believe that it concerns hypothetical systems into which physical values possessing negative norms are actively introduced. In conventional physics, the area where negative norms pose major problems is probably in quantum field theory. That is to say, if we try to relate the theory of relativity to quantum theory, it is inevitable that situations will arise in which the norm for a vector of state will be negative. As this means negative probability, it is regarded as physically having no reality, okay, and is called a ghost, okay. Basically, there's just the negative is a ghost, okay. The negative state is a ghost. Currently, dealing with such ghosts is an important matter also in gauge theories, where the rapid march continues from electroweak unification theories to a grand unifying theory. Negative norms in Imamoto's theory are not vectors of state of quantum theory, but vectors of electric and magnetic fields. He takes phenomena for which conventional physics has found no explanation, such as electrostatic cooling or the divergence of point charges, and looks directly at the contribution of invisible quantities, physical quantities which cannot be observed, are from a physicist's standpoint to non-existence. Whether one regards the introduction of these into a theory in a positive manner as reckless or daring depends in the first place on one's philosophical standpoint. Nevertheless, Inumada's theory, which at the outset was based on the principle of realism and the law of discovery, undeniably is always pregnant with metaphysical characteristics. Okay? Because that just is part of our world. That must be said to be intrinsic. Whether it can be elevated to a scientific level or not depends on its logical consistency and whether it can be proved. Looking first at the Maxwell equations, the symmetry between electricity and magnetism is broken. He regards the symmetry obscured here as latent and postulates that by introducing magnetic currents as invisible physical quantities, the Maxwell equations thus rendered symmetrical symmetrical can hold for generalized electrical and magnetic fields in which positive norm vectors and negative norm vectors are superimposed in three-dimensional space. If we develop these generalized Maxwell equations mathematically, they can be divided into positive norm Maxwell equations and negative norm Maxwell equations. And oh shit. Equations if one finds the column force for a Maxwell equation based on negative norms, one obtains the inverse square law with a minus sign, as this is in the same form as the law of universal gravitation. If one assumes invisible magnetic charge, m gravitational mass, then the forces of the two will be equal. Inumada calls this the unification of electromagnetic fields and gravitational fields. Here is the clue to proof of Inumada's theory. For example, it is well known fact that if a current is passed through a coil, its weight decreases. If we interrupt this as an Inumada flow, if we interpret this as an Inumada flow, the invisible magnetic charge is taken to have the converted to gravitational mass. If we accept this to be true, the following may be expected because the invisible magnetic charge possesses a quantized value. The weight change corresponding thereto should also be quantizable. If quantized weight changes could be observed against continuous changes in voltage, this should provide powerful background. Where does the hypothesis of electromagnetic gravitational unification lead us? The slowing down of time is in strong gravitational fields can be confirmed by redshifts in the spectra from heavy fixed stars. Given this, the slowing down of time may also be expected as a result of negative norm magnetic fields, as the column force can also be repulsive compared with gravity, which is always an attractive force. The acceleration of time could also be possible. Okay? The acceleration of time could also be possible. Inumada calls this time catalyst function. The time slowed down, solid bodies decelerate. In thermodynamic terms, this would be manifest as a reduction in temperature and loss of quantity of heat. An explanation of electrostatic cooling could be expected here. As the reduction in the quantity of the heat supplies negative entropy, this would perhaps introduce a new situation in information science too. Okay, this is mind-boggling, groundbreaking information here that has not made it to us, simple folk. And they have taken this, I know they've taken this and ran with it, and they have some stuff going on. Time machines are not out of the equation or out of the realm of possibility. All kinds of stuff. I mean, this right here just opens the door for all kinds of hoodoo, woohoo, magic, explanation for magic. This is an explanation for magic, is what this is. Literally. Um, it's just crazy, and I know it's deep, and um, it's language that most people don't recognize. But please take the time, go back through and read this stuff again and again. Do a little research on the words and what he's saying here, so you can grasp the idea. And once you do, you will just it's like dropping the mic on somebody. And they've known about this and had lectures on it, and it's just I can't believe that this has not made it out into just at least the the academic world where it would be, discussed, or I don't know, um, Oriental concepts into Western science, and consequently, it seems to contain some hypotheses which are difficult to understand in logical terms. In this lecture, Zerbal posited the existence of the virtual magnetic charge, which is the starting point of the theory. Okay, the virtual magnetic charge is the starting point of the theory, and established the need for the hypothesis used in the derivation of the complex electromagnetic theory from Maxwell's electromagnetic equations concerning Inamoto's unification of gravitational fields, where he says universal gravitation and virtual column force are equivalent from the standpoint of complex electromagnetic theory. He says that the fact that a coil loses weight when a current is passed through it could possibly provide one proof for this, if gradual weight changes could be observed in response to changes in voltage. However, in his own explanation, he emphasized that if the psychotronic triangular relationship mass energy virtual magnetic charge proposed to explain scientifically paranormal phenomenon such as the levitation of objects really holds, then a logical contradiction is produced in the derived hypothesis, and partial revision is needed. He also gave a conceptual interpretation of consciousness in Inamoto's theory, saying that if one assumes the law of increasing entropy on the cosmos scale implies natural passive unidirectional motion, then gravity and a virtual magnetic charge exist as factors in creating a world with localized order. The examination of how this differs from the images we normally associate with the words, and which are difficult to conceive of expect for man, contains some extremely interesting points when viewed from this position as a specialist in theoretical physics. This lecture, which concentrated throughout on an explanation of the logical structure of Monroe's theory, seemed to be a good articulate exposition. It made the Inamoto theory, which speaks to reorganized physics against the background of his ideas, feel like something very personal, even to the author, with his sketchy comprehension of the borders of theoretical physics. But much more elaboration and debate like this lecture is needed to that the more precise theory can be developed, and diligent research is also important to provide evidence for the theory. We look forward to seeing the results. Okay. All right. It goes on. It goes on. Consciousness is described in for example, the dictionary, the internal mental activity of pure perception in contrast to sensory perception. How this mental activity of consciousness can be handled in computers is the subject of much debate as one of the future visions of computers in the 21st century. This lecture was extremely interesting from the standpoint also the content of the lecture was also deeply concerned with the fundamentals of current physics and contained much that was beyond the range of the reporter's understanding. I was able to comprehend it only in the piecemeal fashion and therefore apologize if my report. First of all, Imamoto considered the need to understand the philosophies of the heart of physics, which go back to Newton's era, in order to be able to introduce the concept of consciousness into physics. Newtonian dynamics were constructed without solving two important problems, namely the causes of attraction and the working of consciousness. Modern physics, since Newton, also left behind these problems, and therefore nature and the neutral sciences, in Imamoto's words, has come to be treated in terms of a dry mechanistic theory. The discussion next turned to the accommodation of the workings of consciousness in the natural sciences. Imamoto is a believer that the three elements of matter, energy, and consciousness um, shit between them can be established by complex mathematical expressions on the basis of the conversion formula. Consciousness can be converted to matter or energy. Conversely, he believes that matter and energy too can be converted, and he claims that what is known as consciousness can thereby be measured. Okay, he's saying that you can convert consciousness into matter and energy. Okay, that's magic. He also explained the analogy between thermodynamics and to Inamoda in the information theory. Due to Shannon, information simply goes on disintegrating, as he emphasized that new information theory is needed, which incorporates the concept of consciousness so as to create information at the information source, or to put in order disorganized external information at the receiving end. His discussion abounded in suggestions such as whether the problem solving logic in computers and pattern recognition really adhere to conventional psychochemical theories. This lecture may be seen as a significant discussion with implications for information sciences in the 21st century. I hope this diligent endeavors. Okay, that's going to end this here. Was a deep one. I know. I wanted to do this one to basically lay out a lot of the math for the physicists um, that can understand this, so they can maybe take it and I don't know, uh, drool over it, I guess. But the psychotronics, there's going to be coming. I'm gonna put all of this into a more concise, easy to understand um, form. It's coming up. I'm still learning all of this myself because it's basically a new science. I mean, learning the math that he has done here is just basically learning physics all over again, you know? So that ended this report by the CIA. But the CIA has had this document under wraps since the 70s, and what they have done with it is only up to speculation. But man, oh man, have a nice day.